Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the workshop of the BOCC. Would you all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, first thing on our agenda today is a Four Corners Rifle and Pistol Club request for an LOS, letter of support. If you would like to come on down or to the podium, either way, turn the mic on, pull it as close to you as you possibly can get it, and you may address the board.
Good afternoon. My name is Ron Sarabia. I live at 12075 Road 27.4, Dolores, Colorado. I'm currently the vice president of the Four Corners Rifle and Pistol Club. We have approximately 450 active members, and we come before you today to reach out. If you would write a letter in support of Four Corners Rifle and Pistol Club's outdoor range in Montezuma County as a shooting range. Our current lease on the outdoor range expires September 1st. We just received a proposed new lease from the Colorado State Land Board. After leasing that locale for our outdoor range for over 60 years, the requirements for the new lease are unrealistic for the Four Corners Rifle and Pistol Club to fulfill. The new lease amount goes from $820 annually to $5,000 a year within 3 years, extending to the rest of the proposed 10 years. We now have in place a $10,000 performance bond with the current lease. That will increase in the new lease. They have it listed at $250,000 performance bond proposed. No one has ever heard of such a large performance bond for that amount in this circumstance. And no one we've contacted would even consider making one available to the Four Corners Rifle and Pistol Club. EPA studies and remediation of lead based on the current and best practices, an undefined possible future view of remediation makes it impossible to estimate the cost or agree to comply. The Colorado State Land Board would also have a right to add any additional leaseors to this lease contract at any time, including mining, timber, mineral, oil and gas, and grazing. Furthermore, we would not have the justification to do fencing or interfere with any of the new leaseors or any manner. The Four Corners Rifle and Pistol Club is hopeful in offering a counter proposal lease to the Colorado State Land Board as soon as possible, and hope to take letters of support from local entities who utilize the outdoor range, the Montezuma County Sheriff's Department, Cortez Police Department, Colorado Parks and Wildlife, U.S. Forest Service, Bureau of Land Management, Bureau of Indian Affairs, Ute Mountain Tribal Law Enforcement, Mancos Marshal's Office, and Colorado State Patrol. If you feel comfortable in going on record in supporting our efforts to purchase the property or to negotiate a doable lease with the Colorado State Land Board, we would greatly appreciate a letter of support indicating how the Four Corners Rifle and Pistol Club outdoor range has benefited your agency and the community. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you. I do have a few questions. So typically, we don't write letters of support. We typically will review them and sign them. So typically, those letters of support have to come from you all to us.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, and then you put in your letter of support what you're actually looking for. And if you're looking for the purchase of the property, you know, that's what the crux of what you would be asking us to sign the letter of support for. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's probably it from, is there anything from a legal standpoint? I don't think so. Is there, Ian?
No, I mean, I think I understand the ask, and now it's just a matter of reducing it to writing. And like you said, that's usually something that the third-party entities provide to the county, and then the
Okay.
commissioners review it. in writing that letter, just make sure that you're writing as if it was coming from the county, because you guys are the ones that are signing it. And
Correct.
so that's the way that works.
Okay,
And then obviously it can come in front of us on any Monday. Decisions are made on Tuesday, and then, they can be signed on Tuesdays.
okay,
So, yeah, this kind of needs to come from you, the written letter from you to us, is the way that process works.
okay, yeah. And we've also started a petition online, and we gathered over 100 signatures at the gun show this weekend of public support. And we're going to put that documentation with a counter proposal, which we received an email from the Colorado State Land Board on Wednesday. They said the whole lease is negotiable, versus a month ago, it was black and white and it was a done deal. So we've met with an attorney, and we're looking at our options of going forward and trying to get this in place. Because based on the history of the outdoor range over 60 years, my understanding is, from the club historian and others, it was a 2-track road and a dump, and people just took trash and stuff up there and just target shot. And so if the lease does not get renewed and we have to leave and pull out everything, including the security gate, guess what's going to happen to that piece of Colorado state land? There's actually 205 acres, and we border up against the west side of Phil's world. So, any other questions? Or
Don't forget to include the shooting sports from the 4-H and the county fair.
yeah, we have that in another letter of talking points.
Okay.
And so we're trying to get as much support as we can from the community, not only agencies and, local people that have influence. And I think it helped, because this last couple of weeks, there was a lot of people that contacted people throughout the state and federally. And that's when they came back and said, oh, the lease is negotiable. So we're in the middle of still trying to jump over these hurdles.
So one question I will ask is, you said you have 250 plus acres out there?
205
Are they-
acres.
Are they complaining about the size of the acreage, or
No,
what?
no, it was increased.
It's just the value of the, come on up and grab a microphone there. And it's that we can hear you all, but the people that are watching online can't hear you unless you talk into the mic.
I'm Roger Lawrence. I'm one of the directors, and I'm club historian. And in 2004, when I was president, we initially had 13 plus or minus acres. And we had a lot of people coming from the BLM from behind it, off-roaders and such, that were really made it unsafe. So I called the state, and they gave us the extra as a buffer. And the state also fenced it and signed it. So we don't use but 12 or 13
Right.
of it, but the rest of it is a safety buffer.
And you guys have made continuing improvements out there.
Yeah.
I mean,
We put in a brand-new range for 22s that just for 4-H, Boy Scouts, and all the kids to use. So that's our recent addition.
Okay.
Yeah, if that's all, and I just want to reiterate that we would like to have it another 60 years, in 10-year increments, because I think the benefit to the community, and there's not only people from Montezuma County that we have members, there's people from out of state, Utah, New Mexico, Arizona, that come here to shoot, because we're one of the only shooting ranges within the southwest corner of the state.
have you approached the municipalities for a letter of support?
We're currently have been approaching everybody, the sheriff's office, Cortez City, because they do have the land that we do lease for them for our indoor range. And so we're contact as many people as we can, so we put the letters of support when we send the negotiated lease to the state land board, which is a gal that works out of Alamosa, and then she forwards it on to her supervisor in Denver. And so we're believing that we have a good chance of this going through, but it's just it's a big change from what it's been. And we understand there's a lot of stuff that has to be done, you know, with the EPA standards and some of that stuff. And they're worried about the lead. It's been there over 60-some years. There's a process to reclaim that and take care of that, and we're willing to do that, so. Okay, thank you, guys.
All right,
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Come on down. This is an open discussion for this, and we have no time limit, so yeah, come on down, just state your name.
My name is Mike Upchurch, and I am the president of the club, but I have great people in the club. You know, the safety issue is, I think, is one that I've really thought about a lot. My father was one of those who actually instituted the club back in 1963, and he was just one of those guys that liked to shoot. We have people that come from Dolores County, from Durango, which they can't shoot any longer. We have the undersheriff from Dolores County that comes down and trains people at our range. I think it's more than just a range. I think it's a safety zone and a buffer, so that we don't pour lead out into the forest, into the trees, out into the prairies. And people, if we don't have a range, people are going to go back out in the forest, and they're going to go back out in the orchards, and they're going to go back out in the canyons, because that's what they're going to do. And what we want to do is maintain that land out there in that place, so that we can have it for another 63 years. I noticed in reading some of this is another issue here, but it's something to do with the board. In 2022, there was a range grant made for someone, and I have all the numbers here that were approved by this board for a range grant. Is that still something that we can still do if we need some help? For instance, with the lead eradication, it's around $40,000 to $50,000 to take that out. We're a nonprofit organization.
So I think as a 501c3, and I couldn't tell you I don't know if that's what you fall under, if that's you're not.
C7?
So I don't know what your qualifications are for grants, but I think our grant writer's in here, so I'm looking at him. I think there are different grants that you may or may not qualify for. You just have to look at them depending on what you are as a nonprofit.
Okay.
So
Well, this is kind of like, it kind of rides on the hip of that $250,000 bond that we have to have. And yet our treasurer has seeked out and seeked out and seeked out. And because of our smallness and because that we are a nonprofit organization, it's impossible to have that much. So we're just hoping that somehow that we can kind of get even on this thing and maintain that safety zone out there for kids and for moms and dads and for counties and for sheriffs and all the other people.
So your performance bond, what is that costing you through your insurance carrier right now? 2.5, 3%?
No, for the last numerous bond,
Yeah.
I'm Anita Mayhew, and I'm the treasurer of the club, and have been for maybe 8 years. The last several leases that we've had with the state, we gave them $10,000. So they're holding $10,000 as the bond. And so this is totally different than anything we've ever had. And anybody that I've gone to has said 10 to 15,000 is the norm, and really pretty much the limit of what they've ever heard of. And nobody's gonna, we don't have any assets to put forward. We don't have anybody gonna sign their house away to protect this.
But
So
if I understand this correctly, it's just a performance bond, so it's just a percentage of the number. So if it's $10,000, I would assume you're probably almost there.
there's nobody gonna write one for us. We've gone through
Nobody?
our normal, anybody we could with the NRA. Lockton Affinity goes and researches everybody. And they came back in writing saying, yeah, with the setup that they couldn't offer anything towards that. And the lease actually says that the bond could be increased by any amount at any time in addition to this. So
Yeah, I would
we're trying to
definitely
get a few things locked in. That
get with your attorney, because I would question that, but
Well,
anyway.
everybody said just that, but nobody,
Yeah, that's
there's
a
no-
performance bond.
and what their concern is certainly that when we leave, at any point that we are kicked out or we choose to leave or whatever, that the cost of doing whatever mitigation they decide EPA would require at that time, you know, Mike just said, the lead mitigation costs $38,000 to $50,000 each time. So that's another part of the lease that we didn't even really discuss, but they said that in the new lease says that lead mitigation will happen on a regular basis based on the number of shots fired. So there are just a lot of
Sure.
things we're working on.
Okay.
But if you know of a performance bond, we'll at least have somebody to
Well,
talk to about it.
I mean, I don't know for lead mitigation, but I can't imagine that, I would almost ask them, you know, who's writing these types of bonds? Because it
Well,
seems like if they
when we
put that
did
in
ask, yeah.
if they put that in a contract, they obviously know that they're achievable, I would
When
hope.
Ron mentioned that we had spoken to them and asked a question, the question we first asked was that we just said we cannot find a bond for that amount. And the response was from the person in Alamosa, look harder. So that, at that point, we didn't realize that this was considered a negotiation period. We also requested to get on the State Land Board agenda for May. We were told we couldn't because it's still the negotiation period, and that's where we said, what? We're happy if you're still talking to us, but we didn't know there was a negotiation going on. So we're working really hard in both directions, one to find an alternate path, and the other to see if there really is a negotiation that we can be a part of.
Well, I hope there is a negotiation that you can be a part of, for sure.
You know, those leases with the state land board, whether you're leasing it for grazing or for the recreation, they have basically two different things. Is that what they're trying to do to you? Is try to, with this other possibility of having somebody else in there? Is that what they're trying to do?
That's been on board the whole time. They actually, at the current range, had two other lessors, one for timber and one maybe for mining, that we never saw. And we just kind of discovered that by accident, that there were other lessors that had a right to come, and they never contacted us. But the lease says that we cannot fence anyone out, we cannot interfere with any of their activities, that it would have to be actually taking precedence over anything we're doing at the range, so. I'll show you the lease.
I can't
It's a
imagine
goodie.
much timber being out there. There's nothing, it's nothing
Well,
but cedars.
The whole thing of it is with those deals, see, if they actually, if you go off of that lease, they have to pay you for all those improvements you made to that lease. Whoever leases it next, anybody that would come on that property has to pay you for all your improvements that you made on that property.
Well, there's about,
Whether it's fences, whether it's ponds, whether it's whatever that you've built out there, they have to pay you, reimburse you before they can give that to anybody else.
there's at
That
least 2
person has to
pages.
reimburse you.
Yeah, there's at least 2 pages that say that the state would get first right of refusal on anything we've improved. And if they don't want it, and the next lessor doesn't want it, then we have to have it removed immediately. And there's just no give period for how long it would take for us to get things removed if we need to. So we're really trying to plan ahead, because it went from 6 pages to 22 pages, and there's lots.
Understand.
Anything else?
Nope.
I
That's
agree
it.
with all of what you're saying. It doesn't seem to be what's in writing.
Yeah, and then also, you know, really look at whatever your organization is as a nonprofit and see what's available to you, because I think if you really do some scouring, you could probably find something in there to help you with that remediation of that lead.
Thank you.
All right, thank you all. All right, next up, Mr. Jarmon. It looks like we have our landfill bids, and we have a apparent low bidder.
We do. We received 2 bids. One's from Williams Construction, one's from Kansai Inc. out of Grand Junction. The bids were open in public. We have an obvious low bidder. And both of these contractors' bids were sent to our engineers for review. And our engineers agreed that the Kansai, they've built landfill cells before and have worked with them and have done a good job. So that's about all I have to propose.
Okay, so your recommendation then is obviously Consel?
Yep.
Okay. And it's been reviewed by the engineer and you and everything, it meets all the qualifications and per the bid documents?
Yep.
Well, then, that's pretty easy for tomorrow for a decision.
It is.
All right?
Okay, as soon as I get the decision, I'll have the file sent to him for start construction.
Yeah.
Okay.
If we need to sign it tomorrow, we can do that tomorrow after we approve it.
Okay?
Okay?
Do you need me here for that?
No, just the documents.
I'll give them back to Travis.
Just the signature documents.
These are the originals. Those are the copies of the originals.
They'll probably need to sign the original.
Yeah, that's fine, just leave them here. Okay?
Yeah.
You don't need to be here for that, Mel. Thanks, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yep. Next up, Sheriff Nowlin, looking at a 2024 service contract. Forest service contract, sorry.
Good afternoon. Looks like you have that up there, so.
Oops. We have it.
Sent it over a week ago, so hopefully you had time to look at it.
Yeah, we've got it.
Not much has changed with it at all, other than the amount for abandoned vehicle, tows and whatnot.
So the only thing that I have, and we can look at this together, I know that under your 67 cents a mile, and correct me if I'm wrong, but for four-wheel drive exceptional vehicles like we're using for that, the SSVs, I think in the statute, under that GSA rate, Travis, isn't it higher than the 67 per mile? And we can clear that up. I'm just saying that
I
it's.
don't know anything about that. But 67 cents a mile is what they're charged for the fuel and use of the vehicle.
Right.
Yeah.
And the 65 is what we agreed upon 2 years ago. I think that's consistent with that, so.
There we go.
So is the $5,000, is that, or the 5,500, is that still covering the towing? Did they have a lot of towing last year, or?
Yeah, exactly. And the biggest thing is that because it's public land, they, unless it happens to be on a county road like what I had just 2 weeks ago up on County Road 41, vehicle that was abandoned right in the road just south of the Forest Service boundary. So I got rid of it under the state statute that, and it'll be deemed abandoned and it'll be sold to the tow company. But when it's on a Forest Service road, or if it's in the wintertime in their parking lots, that's where the biggest thing is that vehicles get abandoned there. People go up, live in them, and walk away. The biggest ones are the RVs. Recreational vehicles such as motorhomes and whatnot, nobody wants to touch those. And so they're having funds for them to pay those tow companies for that. That's what that's all about.
Questions, gentlemen?
No. One of those elementary questions. When they abandon on a parking lot for the Forest Service property, why doesn't the Forest Service do that on their own, just tow it out of there, rather than a contractual agreement with us?
Apparently they've had nothing but trouble to do that. This seems to work really well for everybody. It gets these abandoned vehicles off our public lands out of the way.
Well, I don't have any
But I
problem with
don't
that, but it's on Forest Service property,
Mhm.
why?
Yeah.
Well, I had one that was, that had been there for 12 years up by McPhee in that campground up there. And nobody would touch it until this came around, and then they, you know, they'd get paid for it, and so they did. So, I don't know. Beats me, but it's something that it definitely benefits the people in our county and those that visit our public lands. But, you know, it's something that not every sheriff's office does either. State Patrol won't touch them because it's not a state highway. Yeah, they won't touch it. Everybody's got their little jurisdictional boundaries, I guess. So there you go.
I mean, you could argue that some of them were licensed through the state of Colorado to be there, so isn't
yeah.
that a state patrol problem?
No,
Oh.
because if it's not on a state highway, they don't want to know about it. We have the same problem with injury and fatal crashes on public lands. Yeah.
Yeah, because I think they actually only have one law enforcement officer.
They do.
For this whole southwest
whole
region.
force,
I
yeah.
mean, from Bogosa all the way across here, they only have one actual law enforcement
Yeah.
officer, I think. That's
Yeah.
what she told me, she was the only one.
That's true.
But there was a woman a couple of
That's true.
years, a year or so ago. She's the only one that could actually
Yeah. And
do
I don't
that
have
sort of
disagreement
thing
with
for this
BLM.
whole
BLM
southwest part
has
of Canada.
more officers than the Forest Service does. And they take care of that themselves. Now, why?
They have
They
two?
share the same office in the same building. Now, why they can't figure that out, I don't know. But there you go.
Because one is FS and one is BLM.
One starts with a U and the other
Yeah.
starts with a B. Is that what it is? I
That's
don't
what
know.
it is.
I don't have a clue.
It's like CDPHE and all of their fingers of their offices, they're all under CDPHE, but they're all different.
Yeah, yeah,
And they're
And-
all,
yeah. And this is a reimbursement as usual. And so with the new reimbursement, like with the grants, that there's two different types of financial codes. So it can go either way, either under 1693 or 1615 if you decide to agree to this.
So just real quick, Commissioners, on this, we looked at it, it's kind of one of those gray fuzzy areas. Is it a contract or is it a grant? Because if we go, our policies are different. If it's a grant, the funds roll over depending upon how
This
they
is
use the
a-
money. If
It's
it's
one of
This is
those
a
contractual
if
grants?
it's a
Contract.
contract, the funds doesn't roll over.
Yeah.
this
And
is a
then there's no-
contract, right? Ian, the way I read this is a contract?
And I reached out to Nick on Friday, and he was just as confused as I was on this.
I mean, this looks like a contract to me, but I
This is
don't,
we've always used it as a contract,
Well, the title is
as a contract.
no, modification of grant or agreement.
And that's where Nick and I got hung up. Is it a grant or is it a agreement/contract?
So, and
They're-
that's why I asked the
they're-
question up front, because I'm like, is $5,500 really, I mean, if you have to tow even just a handful of vehicles a year, you're spending more than $5,500. I mean,
No, haven't so far. There's only been 2 or 3 a year. So, but it got close last year, but that's why they increased it. Because I said, well,
I mean,
these tow costs go up.
to me, this looks like a contract
it looks like it's a
because
contract to me.
we're agreeing to do services and they're agreeing to reimburse us. And so, I mean, I don't know that it really matters. I mean, they're not giving a,
It
They're not-
does
I think
for
it matters
finance.
For
For
finance,
finance.
for rollover funds is what you just said.
Yeah, and
If it's a
managing the
grant,
plan.
they can roll over. If it's a contract, it's a reimbursement contract for what you do.
Whatever you want to do. This is the same thing that we've always done, but
Okay.
whatever you want to do.
It looks like a contract.
I'm
to
just
me.
asking questions. I don't have any problem with it.
Okay. Well, we'll let you decipher it for us for tomorrow.
All right.
But it looks like a contract.
I think it's got all the hallmarks of a contract. I would say it's a contract.
Okay,
It's an agreement.
which is a contract.
So is a grant. Isn't that an agreement between two parties? They give you money if
I
you
thi-
write for it.
I think we understand
Yeah.
what's been presented.
We could do this
Okay,
all
moving
afternoon.
on. We're done with that, right?
Yep,
Anything else
we're
on
done with that.
Okay,
I'm done.
very good. Discussion on these high mileage vehicles. Shane brought to our attention that we have 5 that need to go. One we went way over.
Yep.
18,000, 12,000, 5,000, 5,810. So, we had asked about 8 months, a year ago, to have a plan, how you were going to move your deputies back and forth in the same vehicle so vehicles aren't sitting so that we can roll these out. Did you guys come up with that plan?
Well,
Or-
I mean, the thing is, though, is that a plan is great until it doesn't work. And here's the problem, is that when we have an emergency or disaster, if I need to have everybody that is available to respond. When you're sharing cars, you reduce those. I don't get the deputies out there, for example, for evacuations of subdivisions, just like what we had just not too long ago up at the West Fork. The other thing is that working the shifts that we have 2 to 3 on. Most of the time it's just 2. And if they're sharing a car, they're answering and responding and tied up on calls over their shift. And so if that car partner is supposed to, they're sitting in the office and there's calls that are coming in, we have no vehicle for them to go in. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And you're going to mile out those cars a lot faster because they'd be running all the time. We don't get the coverage that we do now when you reduce the number of vehicles. And I'm not asking for all 5, even though we talked about that a year or so ago when that went to enterprise, of having those replaced.
These
I
aren't the
mean,
leased
it's nothing
vehicles, though.
but
These are the owned vehicles, right? These are all older, 16s, 17s. Yeah, but anyway, yeah, go ahead.
Well, that's because all the others were owned too, but they were replaced with this lease. It's no different. It's no different. That's what we did before.
No, the leased vehicles are gonna, once they meet their 100,000, then they're gonna get a new leased vehicle
I
coming
understand.
in.
I understand.
So the 16 that we just put on the road, I don't know, last year, whenever they all got on the road,
I think it was
this year.
14, but anyway. Yeah.
those are all out there. So as far as the reducing the fleet, these need to go because they're all timed out by 18,000 to 5,800 miles.
Well, I understand that. They need to be replaced. But the problem is too, is that when vehicles go down, we don't have, I mean, right now we have 2 pools that are older vehicles. When those go away, we won't have any. We don't have anything to replace those that are
So
tied up in the shop.
I thought that there were extra pool vehicles left when we did this.
There is pool vehicles.
So there was supposed to
two-
be
2 or 3.
2 for the deputies and 1 for the,
There's no more for detectives. There's 2 for patrol.
or
Yeah.
patrol.
Yeah, that's all there is. Yeah.
So,
There isn't
and they're
any-
all new right now, correct?
Yeah,
Except
they
for these
haven't been-
timed out.
Right, they haven't been upfitted yet, the other 2, but yeah, the other ones that we got last year, they're out, yes.
Yeah.
And one of the detective vehicles was apparently reacquisitioned to some other department instead of something else, I don't know.
Yeah, it's
But
going to
anyway,
CSU.
yeah.
So they're repurposed for their
Repurposed to
150,000 miles, which is the same thing we'd do with
Yeah.
these if you can, because the rest of the county's 115,000 or 15
Sure.
years.
And
Not the sheriff.
I agree to have those replaced at a lower mileage, there's no doubt about it, we need to. But again, it's the number of vehicles. If you reduce those, we're reducing what we have to respond in, and especially if we have any go down. And that's what worries me about those that were purchased, all that bunch, because that's what happened before. And pretty soon, they have the same type of problems that we've had with different production years of vehicles. And it doesn't matter who the manufacturer is, just every one of them is different. They'll get, I mean, we've had like the 2018s, they had timing issues and stuff constantly. And it was just a bad production year. And you never know what you're going to get. But it seems like it's contagious. You see what I'm saying? When you have a number of vehicles, pretty soon the others start to end up with the same problems for whatever reason. And it's certainly not an operator error issue. It's just the way that it is. I'm concerned that when we do have vehicles go down, we just don't have any to put out there if we reduce all those vehicles. I mean, if we could just get 3 of them replaced and reduce the other 2, that's fine. We can do something with that. We can make that work. I'm just asking, don't take all 5 of them, then I'm scrambling of how we're going to get deputies out there when they need to be out there working.
I got to be straight up with you, Steve.
Yep.
What we're looking at from the state legislature and the cuts that we're about to eat is going to hurt us tremendously.
I know.
If, what is it, amendment, or it's not an amendment, it's a ballot
Initiative.
initiative 50?
Oh, I saw that, yeah.
If that comes into effect,
I don't know.
know what we're going to do.
I know.
We'll be without departments.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we don't know if it's going to happen or not, but
I know, and I'll be real honest with you. We just can't go away, even if it's just right down to me.
right.
I don't
I'm
think
here
we're asking
forever,
that. I think,
but the
I
thing
think what
is-
we had,
yeah.
I think, I'm gonna go right back to, the reduction of the fleet was the intention, which if we do these, pull these back, repurpose them or not, and they're ready to go, these 5 are ready to be timed out for a SO vehicle, because they're over the mileage, which is what we agreed on for the 100,000. And then we had asked for the plan, and today we still don't really have a plan from you guys of how you're going to double up. Because what we see, and it's more than just us, we've got vehicles sitting for 4 days, and you're right, if they're being used every day, the mileage is going to be more every day. We get that. But they're leased vehicles, and they're going to go out instead of 4 years, maybe 3 years, or 5 years, 4 years. And we understand that. That's where they're leased. But they don't need to be sitting in somebody's house, in front of somebody's house for 4 days or 3 days or whatever the shift schedule may be. That's what we were looking at. So I'd still really like to see that, but I think we had already made the decision that we were going to reduce the fleet. So it just happens that all of these that are highlighted, these 5, 6, 7, 8 vehicles are all going to be reductions of the fleet. And they're not all just from your department. So if you could get that at least to us to see what it looks like.
Yeah, I
Okay.
certainly will.
All right.
And I'll come back with you with it, and we'll certainly look at that. It's just like the three vans, the transport vans. Man, I'll tell you, as many transports as we're doing, this is crazy, and I'll get it. And I can't send those vans out. They're so old. They just have to stay within the Four Corners area here, locally.
So you're
And
talking
I've
about
never asked for those to be replaced.
So you're talking about the Express
Yep,
2500s or whatever they're called?
yep, they're 2014s.
So is that another conversation? Do we need to time those out? Because the mileage on them is not
They're low,
super low.
but they're old.
13,000, 14,000. Well, one's 110. Oh, no, that's the wrong one.
Yeah, that's the 2012. I don't know if we still have that one or not. I don't know that that's really a current list.
Because they're gonna reach the 15 years before they time out on mileage. they're already 10 years old and they've only got 14,000 miles.
Well, you've got other departments up there besides the sheriff's office, so I don't know what you're talking about there, yeah.
Well, I was looking at your transport vehicles there.
Some of those aren't even ours.
No, this is the whole fleet.
Oh, okay, yeah.
It's the whole fleet that either have reached their 15 years or their 100,000 miles. This
Would
is
you-
what was presented to us from
Shane?
Shane.
Would you send that to me, please?
Yeah.
Send that to me. I haven't seen it.
It's been in front of us in public
I just keep track of my own. I don't.
a couple times now.
Yeah. We just know where they're at.
So
Okay.
All
Send
right,
that to
well, if
me,
you-
we'll come back in a week or so.
get
Okay.
that plan to
Give
us
me
to
some
see
time.
where we're at.
Okay.
But, you know, Commissioner Lindsay is right. At the Fire Commission meeting that I was at on Thursday, through the legislature now, they're even looking at the RAR going down to 5.3%,
Yeah.
which is,
It's ridiculous. I know.
I don't know.
I know, it is.
And the pressure, I mean, the pressure that oil and gas is taking in their fields,
Yeah.
I don't know how some of those
I
companies
don't
stay
either.
in the
I don't
state of
know.
Colorado. I really don't.
I don't know.
Anyway,
And
Yeah.
I mean, they're talking, I mean, Kinder Morgan, I don't know what they're gonna do.
Yeah,
That's the scary part of it.
yeah. Well, with the number that I have as far as deputies, which isn't that many, just having to rearrange their work schedules, the problem is being able to keep 24-hour coverage. That is the problem. And I have to have at least 2 out at all times. And that is a problem. I can't just send one out. It's not even feasible anymore. It's too dangerous. So,
I don't,
okay.
yeah. We'll look for
Okay.
your,
All right.
when you get that in front of us. But right
All
now,
right.
those, as far as it pertains to you, these would be the reduction of fleet that as it pertains to you,
All
and
right.
these would be coming back.
Yep, that's
Because
fine.
that was part of
Let's
a
just
final
keep
decision
discussing it. All right,
that we had made
all right.
a long
Okay.
time ago.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
Okay, Miss Director of Public Health. The Colorado National Collaborative is first, CNC.
Yes, but I need a little clarification on contract versus grant, with what you were just talking about. So what I have here are 2 contracts that are yearly, that we
Okay.
renew. But it's going on a form that says Montezuma County Grant Application Submission Form. So I'm
It's
just.
a grant?
No, it's a contract. You're
Okay.
signing a contract. So we
So
are
we
doing
get
it this way, correct?
You apply for the grant, then get a contract?
You typically
you're
apply
overthinking it.
for a grant.
Yeah.
And if you're awarded the grant, it comes with a contract. And in the contract, it specifies what you're going to either be reimbursed or the money that's allocated for that grant.
I think
So-
where I was confused was the carryover conversation with grants versus a contract. So I'm just, in my head, need to wrap my head around what I'm actually filling out here, because this says grant application. It's not, nothing's rolling over. These are contracts.
Right.
So should we say grant/contract application? I'm just asking.
Yeah, I
because
wouldn't overthink it at this point in time. I'd just present it. I mean,
This is supposed to be conversation time, so that's why I'm asking the question, because I hadn't
is.
thought about it that way.
is conversation
And then
time.
when that came up, I'm like, well, these are both contracts. These are not grants.
So your
I'm
contract
applying
is going
for.
to be specific to $113,000,
The first one is, yes.
correct? Right now, the one that's in front of us. And
Yes.
you're going to you have that money to expend, up to $113,000,
Yes.
correct?
If,
And if you overspend, they're not going to pay you more.
we're not going to overspend.
Okay. Well, that's basically in a nutshell that you have a allocation of money and that's all you have.
Nothing carries over, though.
No,
Okay.
that's what you get.
Okay. So, I'll ask more later, maybe. This one here, the first one, is our CNC program, Colorado National Collaborative, our suicide prevention program. And I have Niana Phillips here with me. If we have any specific questions about this, this is through CDPHE, and it runs September 1 to August 31st of next year. And for $113,000, it is for one FTE. Fully covers our one FTE. Do you have any questions? And we have not received the contract yet, correct? For this, for the upcoming. Okay, but we have not submitted anything yet. That's why we're bringing this to you now
Okay.
for the contract. So no questions for Niana? Okay. So
Nope.
this is
So you
Niana.
can-
You've met Niana before, right? At our
Yeah.
Board of Health meeting? Okay.
Man, yeah, she came in one time. She's been here once to see us.
Okay. Okay. Did you have a question, Commissioner Lindsay? Were you going to
No,
ask?
I
Okay.
did not. Thank
Okay.
you.
All right. The second one is for Trent Woods, who is our Emergency Preparedness and Response Coordinator. And that is also through CDPHE for the Public Health Emergency Preparedness Grant. They call it a grant. It's a contract. And it is for the amount of $53,489. And this one would start July 1 to June 30th next year. So, different fiscal year for that. And it's for a 0.5 FTE, because they had, historically, we used to have a regional position. It was a one full-time employee. Then they decreased it from no longer regional. It's just a local. And so it's a half-time position. So, Trent is a
Half.
full-time employee, but half of his job is this.
Halftime paid by this
Yes. Yes.
submission. Okay.
And, yeah. Any questions on, I don't have Trent with me. He's at a PIO training right now. So,
You'd only have half of them with you anyway.
yeah. So,
Correct?
any
A
questions?
0.5?
Huh?
A 0.5?
0.5.
Yeah. Okay.
So can I leave both of these have my original signatures on them? Do I leave these with you all to sign tomorrow?
I think I've got DocuSigns from you.
No.
No?
That DocuSign is for something for next week. That's our air quality.
Oh.
Yeah.
Ah.
And she promised me it won't expire before next
Okay.
Tuesday.
I was going to say, they're going to
So.
expire. Because I got them today.
So you don't have,
You can leave those and we'll sign those.
okay.
You can leave them with Commissioner Copenhaver because he's going to have to move them forward before I can sign them. Unless he
All right.
doesn't want to.
Okay, no questions?
Nope.
All right, thank you.
Thank you for coming over. All right. Now, we have one more, and it's in discussion for the CFPD. Did we finally get,
Yeah, so I'll explain to you where we're at with this. And before I do, I want to just talk to you about how I structured this on the agenda. So we've got a discussion of these contracts today on the agenda. Then we've got an executive session tomorrow. If there's anything that you guys want to discuss in private regarding these contracts, any specific legal questions you want answered that you want answered in private, we've got that option. And then, assuming that we get to some sort of a resolution, we certainly are in a position where you guys could sign those tomorrow, and that option's on the agenda tomorrow. So I'll give you a rundown of the basic situation here. We've got a final contract with Axis that was ready to go several months ago. I've been working with the Cortez Fire Protection District Attorney. We've got a contract pretty much ready to go with one sticking point, and it involves the termination clause of the contract. Cortez Fire Protection District Attorney has asked that the termination contract allow for termination for cause, and then it includes something that says including but not limited to funding shortfalls on the part of either party. And so they can terminate in the event of funding shortfalls by providing 30 days notice to us. That's what they want in the contract. The Access contract does not have that. When we originally conceived of this program, what we conceived of is we had a set grant amount that was going to be used to pay these third-party providers. It was up to the third-party providers to operate within that budget. And if they didn't operate within that budget, then they would be in violation of the contract and conceivably could be liable for breach. Does that all make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And so we've got two options at this point. We can go with this more loose contract that Cortez Fire has proposed, which in essence allows anybody to terminate by showing some kind of a financial shortcoming, allow them to terminate upon 30 days' notice. And I think that if we decide to go with that looser language, then we need to give Access the same out. And we need to give ourselves the same out. Because what we don't want to happen is we don't want a situation where Cortez Fire Protection District comes to us and says, hey, we've got a funding shortfall, we're terminating our deal, here's 30 days notice. And then all of a sudden we can't get out of our contract with Access because there's no cause. And so we're locked in with Access with no recourse against Cortez Fire. And so what we need to do is we need to make a decision whether we want to go with this clause that allows for termination for a financial shortfall, and it gives us all basically the ability to terminate upon 30 days notice. Or if we want to go with a stricter contractual termination clause like what's in the Access contract that says you can only terminate for cause, and just push on Fire Protection District to have that same contractual clause. I think that there's advantages and disadvantages of each. Obviously, there's flexibility in this looser language that the Cortez Fire Protection District has proposed. It certainly does create a situation where the program could fall apart more easily if one of these partners gets out of it. I mean, it's a very loose for-cause termination provision, and quite frankly, I mean, I'm not even sure that it's a for-cause termination. I mean, it's almost at-will termination is what Cortez Fire is proposing. I think that the key point is the contracts need to mirror each other. I mean, either we need to have it loose or we need to have it tight, and that's...
They both need to be
Yep.
equal.
Yep. So we
All
don't
three
run into a
parties.
situation where one party terminates, the other parties are in, and then there's liability between the two that are in, and the one that's out is out.
So,
And Bobbi, I'm happy for your feedback too. I mean, you're the one that deals with the program on a regular basis, and so, it's really just what do you want to get out of this contract? I mean, do you want something that's locking these providers in to the end of the year, locking them all into the end of the year and saying, here's your budget, this is what you've got, this is how you're going to operate, you're going to do these services, and you're going to do it for this much money? Or do you want to allow for something looser?
So the only input that I would like to let you guys know is that each of these contracts, each organization set their own budget up that is listed in the contract. So they're aware of where they started. They get monthly notices. Laurel sends everyone monthly, like what they've spent. So keeping an accurate budget of where you stand, both organizations have that information. So there's not necessarily, unless those documents aren't being reviewed, there's no reason why you wouldn't know where you are in your spending. So,
Right.
And they formulated their budget, so I'm sure they accommodated all the expenses in that. So, anyway, that would be the only thing I would just add to it.
I don't see
We're gonna start Nowlin.
be really anything?
I have
in this
options
contract
from
that's not-
CCI, so I've been looking to chuck it at them.
I mean, do you guys have any concern with the loose contract? I don't, I mean, it's a year-to-year contract.
Yeah.
So,
And we're not scheduled to begin this until
We're
2:30, so I won't start the recording until then.
I mean, we're in the end of April already. So the first quarter is already gone. I don't,
The first third's already
the
gone.
first third's gone.
So if you guys want to go with a looser contract, then I need to reach out to legal counsel for Axis and let them know that we're going to make that change. And if you guys want to go with the tighter contract that only allows for termination for cause, then I need to reach out to Cortez Fire Protection District and let them know. Obviously,
So you
no
need a
dis-
direction.
Yeah, I need a direction today. I
So-
mean, no decision could be made, but I would like some direction as to how to move forward on this.
I guess why are they, I mean, they've signed the contract the last
Yeah.
year, which was the same
It
language.
all hinges on funding anyway. If there's no funding, there's no
So
program.
it's all the
As I
same. Why are they?
As I understand it, the concern is that if services were provided that took them to a point where they were capped out on their budget by, say, October, they don't want to be in a position where they still have a duty to provide these services under this contract and no money to reimburse them for it.
But they built their own contract for the entire year, just like.
That's the concern. I'm not saying
so-
whether that's the concern that was
I would
expressed.
almost,
Yeah, it's one of those.
And if it's something you guys want to discuss tomorrow in executive session, we've got that option.
let's,
Certainly, I can wait on a decision until tomorrow, and you guys can give me direction then, if that's what you'd like to do. I mean, it's going to delay signing a week, but that's where it's at.
we've already delayed
Yep.
4 months
Yeah.
because of, sorry, attorneys. Had to say it, sorry. I guess I don't,
I don't have a feeling one way or another. The only thing I would think is Cortez Fire needs out for cause, but
they built their own budget.
they built their own budget and
And
cause,
they
is-
submitted it,
just because
just
cause
like
is we're
Access
out of
did.
money.
So nobody's. Is this coming just from the attorney or is this coming from the board? Do we know? Can you reach out to any of those guys and find out what's going on? I mean, what, when we had this
This is
discussion
a
couple weeks ago-
legal distinction, and, I mean, I certainly haven't been privy to legal conversations between the attorney and the client, but
Sure.
my assumption is that, there's this concern that I just explained from Cortez Fire, and the attorney's putting language in the contract to address that concern. That's the way this stuff generally works.
So it's just, yeah. I don't know. For the last 8 months, I'm not sure I could go either way.
Let's take it up tomorrow.
Okay, we'll do that. We'll have an executive session tomorrow, it looks like.
If we need it.
Yep.
Okay. Well, it looks like we're out of time, or 30 seconds until out of time and before we jump on our next meeting. So thank you all for coming. I appreciate it. And go keep getting some more contracts and/or grants.
Yeah. All of the above.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. Okay, with that, it is 2:30 and we're ready to jump on Zoom if we're ready, Travis, I guess. Okay, we're good.
Okay, and thank you, commissioners, and we are still waiting for a couple more.
this contract really matter at this point in time? If they need to get out of this, I don't know.
The only thing is, with the way that thing's written, what I understood, that it's gonna leave us probably with taxes if we do it that way.
They built their budget. Because all we're gonna do is, because they went to a full-time, 24/7, all we're gonna do is pull back.
Yeah.
Like it was when it started with only the one crew. I don't see that it's gonna happen.
Recording
Okay.
in progress.
Thank you for starting the recording, Laura. I think I've made you the host, so you should be able to keep an eye on the waiting room and let people in and out as necessary. I'm going to go ahead and begin sharing my screen with everybody. And let me go to full screen mode. And hopefully everybody can see my screen now. If everybody could just visualize by raising your hand, giving a thumbs up, or picking your nose, whatever comes most naturally for you. We'll go ahead and get started. Thank you to all the boards of commissioners for participating today and the other participants as well. We are here today to discuss the Alpine Loop and the ongoing broadband needs across the region and across multiple regions in the state. And so with that, I'd like to start just by way of introduction so that we know who all is here. So I'm just going to call on the various counties as I see them, and then I will ask Laura, who's monitoring the guest list, to call out other individuals as they appear, since I'm screen sharing and don't see those now. But let's start with introductions from Montezuma County, please.
Commissioner Jim Candelaria.
Commissioner Kent Lindsay.
Commissioner Gerald Copenhaver.
County Attorney Ian McLaren.
Travis Anderson, Montezuma County Administrator.
All right, thank you. And from La Plata County?
Yes, hello everyone. Matt Salko, La Plata County Commissioner.
Clyde Church, La Plata County Commissioner.
Marcia Porter Norton, La Plata County Commissioner.
And Chuck Stevens, County Manager, is also present.
All right, thank you. And Archuleta County?
Veronica Medina, County Commissioner.
Ronnie Mays, Archuleta County Commissioner.
Good afternoon, everybody. Warren Brown, County Commissioner.
And Derek Woodman, Archuleta County Manager.
Great. Could I ask Corey Brendel to introduce himself?
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Corey Brindle with Region 10, just north of you, and I'm the Regional Broadband Director.
Todd Weaver. We don't hear you, but Todd Weaver is the Archuleta County Attorney. Eric, would you introduce yourself?
Hi, I am the Archuleta County Broadband Manager, and I also help out with Region 9 when you guys need it.
Mark, could you please introduce yourself?
Sure, Mark Opegard with the Southern Ute Indian Tribe. Support Jeff Ingman and his support of the broadband projects here.
Thank you, Mark. John Ranson. So we have John Ranson on the call. Michelle.
Good afternoon. This is Michelle Haynes with Region 10.
Great. And I believe that I have gotten everybody. So we're good to go. Shaq.
All right, thank you for that, Laura. So let's jump right into the issues that we're all facing. Some of this is going to be by way of review for a lot of you, maybe new information to some of you. But in the Region 9 area, La Plata County, 37% of the residents lack access to minimum broadband speeds, what the FCC and NTIA would consider underserved of 100 by 25. In Montezuma County, that number is 42%. In Dolores County, that number is 76%. In Archuleta County, that number is 57%. And in San Juan County, that number is 81%. Now, I do have an asterisk by San Juan County because these are numbers taken from 2022 that have not been updated. However, Vero has been building out internet connectivity in Silverton, so that number for Silverton is likely better at this point. In addition to that, we know that not having access to internet is a public safety concern. What you see on your screen right now is an article from the Pagosa Sun, April 12th of last year, when at least the Archuleta County and La Plata County commissioners will remember that all telecommunications were taken down by a single strike. In addition to taking out, people's ability to stream video games or watch YouTube or whatever the case might have been, it also affected the hospital had no phone services, and for quite some time, a period of several hours, 911 was inoperable. It also took out, a lot of people aren't aware, but the cellular towers are run on a fiber backhaul, so it took out the cellular cell phones. Nothing of that nature was working. As far as the economy, many of our local areas depend heavily on internet sales. In fact, most people who have to accept credit card payments, that is done over the internet, of course. At the San Miguel Power Association meeting, February 10th of 2023, so just a little over a year ago, it had been reported that RICO had had 21 outages since 2020. And that continues to happen. It happened in Silverton in 2022 in the middle of the summer. And of course, all of Silverton's business is done by tourists during the summer. And when they can't accept credit cards, it really affects the economy. Again, last year there was a cut in lines that caused widespread outages. This is from the Durango Herald, and this affected the Durango-La Plata County Airport. It also affected Durango, Bayfield, Dolores, Cortez, and parts of Farmington when that went down. And of course, we can all imagine what happens when communications go down for air traffic control at an airport and how that can be a critical safety and economic outcome. Many of you will also remember in 2021, reported in the Cortez Journal, the big outage that we had that took down all of Cortez and part of Montezuma County. I know Commissioner Candelaria was commissioner at the time, and he'll certainly remember some of the fallout from that. So the question is, why is this still an issue? And I'm going to continue to move through some of these slides, but I'm going to let Corey Brendel from Region 10, who is partnering with us on a statewide effort, kind of talk about some of these. But the short answer is, in the past, we've always been faced with top-down government-fed programs that just haven't worked. And so, Corey, I'm going to let you speak right now, but why don't you tell us a little bit about what M&T was and what they promised compared to what they delivered?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Thanks for taking the time to get together today. Real quick, Shaq, before we jump into that, I wanted to talk a little bit about the middle mile versus the last mile. When we talk about middle mile networks, which is what we're focused on here today, we're talking about the critical infrastructure, the wholesale side of it, where fiber goes from one town across a distance to another town and brings a supply of internet to that town. Right now, we have an outage on a bridge on Highway 50, and that's a major artery between two communities, Montrose and Gunnison, and it's affecting traffic getting to all the towns on the western side of the state. So you've got to go about 6 hours around to make it across that middle mile section of bridge, of roadway in the center of the state right now. That's a little different than when we get to the town and then we take the local roads to the homes and businesses. So what we're really focused on is that middle mile piece. So this effort started quite a while ago. At the time, Quest Communications, the predecessor to CenturyLink and Lumen, approached the state of Colorado and said, we've got a great plan. And they kind of did the central planning thing. They looked at where the communities were, and they said, if the private company puts up 2/3 of the funding and the state, GOIT at the time, the Governor's Office of Information Technology, puts up 1/3 of the funding, we'll have about $90 million, and we'll get every county seat throughout the state connected with fiber. And we'll do this with redundancy, with loops. So we will get capacity, we'll get redundancy, and over time, the hope at the time was that costs would decrease. And this was done in an era where T1s were the fastest thing of the day. 1.5 megs, basically a couple phone lines connected together. And they were trying to replace dial-in internet service with DSL. So the speeds were very low. But if you look here, the loops really didn't materialize as loops. And even the one that was originally drawn in as a loop that shows as a single path here into Silverton, for example, this was a microwave route. But these got single routes of fiber. At the end of the day, with all that public money spent, a single private company, Quest at the time and now CenturyLink and Lumen, the same company in succession, owns that infrastructure and controls that monopoly network between towns as middle mile. So, Shaq, do you want to advance one? So that was called the Multi-Use Network, or the MNT. About 10 years, 12 years later, a group of school districts in the Northeast, BOCCs, the Centennial BOCCs group, got together and with their vendors came up with a plan to serve the entire state and to basically bring fiber to community anchor institutions, libraries, schools, hospitals, on and on, but really focused on schools for the most part. This was kind of their targeting map, the areas they wanted to get to. But much of the infrastructure on the western slope wasn't actually developed, and the portions of it that were, basically the closer to the Front Range you were, the higher a chance of having some infrastructure development, and the further away you were, the less likely you were to see that development completed. In the end, that outfit went out of business and was dissolved, and there's remnants of infrastructure throughout the state, some of which are quite useful, but mostly incomplete. And they're now owned and operated by a private company. So what you see in those two examples, and I think what Shaq is trying to get at here, is this is an example of how central planning works. When we did a FOIA request, when we asked the federal government, what's going to be built? Where is it going to be built? And how is it going to be built? This is us as rural, remote communities asking this. This was the redacted document that we got back. This was the result of central planning. So we want to participate. And we know where the bodies are buried. We know where the holes are. We know where the routes are. We typically can have some constructive input to help develop this infrastructure in a way that's mindful of the public dollar being spent. So, Shaq, go ahead and advance. And that kind of brings us to the discussion we're in today, which is, the piece we think we can make a big effect on is the middle mile piece. It's kind of the prerequisite for having the services functioning well in a town, in your area. The three areas that we wanted to affect change were capacity, redundancy or reliability, which has really bit the southwest part of the state pretty hard, and then the cost. We want to reduce costs over time. So, Zach, I'll let you continue from there.
So I think the question that comes to mind for a lot of us is, why isn't private industry addressing the need? And the simple matter is, middle mile that Corey was describing is, one, there's not a lot of participants. There's Zayo, there's CenturyLink, but most of the internet service providers that we work with are trying to get last mile connections to people's homes. It's like a sub-developer or a contractor that goes in, puts in a sub-development, and they build roads to connect the houses in the sub-development, but they certainly don't have the money to build Highway 160 to connect all of the sub-developments. The infrastructure cost of putting in the middle mile fibers and cables is very high cost, And there's a very low take rate across the rural areas of our state. And the take rate is the number of homes per mile that will participate. As you can imagine, in rural Colorado is a lot more sparse for take rate than, say, downtown Metro Denver. So the high infrastructure costs combined with the low take rate leads to an extremely long payback period where the private internet service providers just can't afford to do it. Even with heavy subsidies, we're looking at a internet service provider that is building out in Dolores County right now. And they're doing a good job building out Dove Creek. They have some USDA Reconnect funding, but trying to get to the most remote areas, Squaw Point, Bug Point, and I forget the name of the third point out there. The take rate, even with the 75% subsidy, is so low that they're having a hard time trying to make that pencil. So building the middle mile infrastructure for these carriers to be able to connect to is going to be important. And Region 10 is kind of the brainchild behind the middle mile network. So I'm going to pass it back to Corey.
Sure. So some of the slides here that folks have seen before, and some maybe new, and glad to take any questions at the end. Region 10 is a set of 6 counties and 18 communities that are just north of Region 9, where we're kind of a mirror set of communities, roughly the same scale and size. Our organization started in 1972, and we've been into community services and support of varying types throughout the years. Even had radio repeaters at one point to bring radio service out to the area. So community services are kind of the backbone of Region 10. The headquarters is in Montrose. I live in Crested Butte in Gunnison County. Region 10 has developed about 600 miles of fiber, both through acquisition and construction, and primarily through partnerships with communities within the 6-county region. We currently have 14 carrier neutral locations or equipment rooms that are deployed throughout our territory, and we've got about 20 of them that are in development, both along the I-70 corridor as well as the efforts in the Southwest. This kind of goes over the yellow section in the left is kind of our territory. We're the furthest from, maybe not the furthest, but we're definitely on the western half of the state, fairly remote from Denver and Colorado Springs, which are our metro areas, and we're quite a ways away from Albuquerque and Salt Lake as well. I would say that Region 9 is largely, in the same situation. So we know that the market has not developed a lot of new middle mile fiber infrastructure in these areas, and we decided to try to chase or get connected to a better source of internet service. And if we did it with more than one, we would increase the reliability, and if we created a competitive marketplace, we would reduce cost. So we needed to acquire fiber, and we needed to acquire optical equipment to transport the data back and forth, and routing equipment to make decisions as to where that data goes. Does it head to Salt Lake or down to Albuquerque or up towards Denver? And at the end of the day, it really comes down to the people involved. The partnerships have been incredibly valuable. That's probably my favorite part of the entire position. The technology is great, but really working with our neighboring communities and improving, what we're doing has been very gratifying. But we wanted to get to Denver first. We wanted to connect to Region 9. Those were kind of our 2 goals. And as we were moving along this journey, the opportunity to connect to Salt Lake City and have a westbound diverse route came up, and we added that as one of our primary opportunities. So, Jack, can you move forward one? So when you're developing access to internet in the major cities, there's 2 things you're looking for. The first one is to connect your areas to the Tier 1 or the national internet service providers. These are the major backbones that go between the NFL cities, that go from Chicago to Atlanta and out to Los Angeles and San Francisco and up to San Jose. These are the large providers in the cities, Lumen, CenturyLink, Zayo, AT&T. You could add 2 or 3 others onto here, but we wanted to take our remote areas and give us direct access to these major providers rather than going through the Tier 2 or Tier 3 intermediary providers. So I wanted to make sure the performance of the networks that we get is on par with what you'd have in any major city. An advanced one. The other part of the story was to try to get connected directly to the big 6 content providers. most of the applications you use on your laptops, your cell phones, on and on, most of those applications, the data is not housed on your device. The data is housed in the cloud. And the cloud is really a data center that lives within these large organizations. So Google Cloud, AWS at Amazon, Microsoft Azure, the Meta properties, on and on. Each of these companies hosts all these small applications. And that really is the core of what the cloud is. So if we were sitting down here in Durango and we want access to Google Cloud, I don't want to go through 2, 3, 4 different networks to get there. That introduces latency and congestion and all the performance impacting issues. I want to go direct to Google Cloud. So if I can send that traffic straight to Albuquerque, straight to Salt Lake, out to Dallas, that improves the performance in the rural areas of Colorado. Advance one, please. So the other aspect was reliability. We've seen this in all of our communities, whether it's a San Luis Valley, Montrose, Gunnison, throughout La Plata, and Montezuma, and Archuleta, is we have these waves of downtime, and they're caused by a number of different things. On the upper left, there was a mudslide on I-70 that took out the highway as well as all the conduits for fiber cables, really impacted that area significantly. Those acts of God happen occasionally. Closer to Denver, we see a lot of construction. Roads get built and rebuilt. Buildings go in. There's a lot of hands in that area, just a lot of humans. So conduits and fiber cables are constantly impacted. Down in the San Luis Valley and out towards Walsenburg, we had 9 outages in one summer at one point, and a number of them were based on someone with a post hole digger simply going through and putting back up ranch posts in the spring. So that cut through the cable and took out 9 communities over and over and over. And then out in the southwest, we have all these factors, really. You've got a little more population in the city centers. You've got acts of God. You have the potential for forest fires. That PathNet route going up through the San Juan National Forest near Dolores, those are high-risk areas for cables to go through. If you have a forest fire that impacts towers, these aluminum cables with glass inside them carrying the data can be impacted pretty easily. So we wanted to improve the reliability, and this is kind of how we plan to do it. So, Shaq, next one. So the backbone here, the blue fiber largely exists. There's a section between Pagosa Springs and Ignacio that is being constructed with partnership from La Plata Electric, La Plata County, Archuleta County, and the Southern Ute Indian Tribe. And the Southern Utes will be performing that construction. That'll kind of sew up the ring. There's some fiber over Wolf Creek Pass that will come online later this summer, is what we're hearing. And there's existing fiber from South Fork to Walsenburg. Up and down I-25 corridor from Denver to Walsenburg, there's a number of different routes. We've actually been talking to the state of New Mexico to use some fiber next to the railroad there. And we are in the process of acquiring fiber between Denver and Grand Junction. And then we have existing fiber, as you all know, between Grand Junction and Durango that Tri-State owns, we can lease on. So at the end of the day, we can get this ring architecture put together with largely existing assets and some construction. Shaq, go ahead. So once if your community is along this backbone or within striking distance of the backbone, we need to get the services from the backbone out to the community. And the way we do that is with a lateral fiber. It's just a cable that's put in the ground or put on power poles. It comes out to the community, and it reaches a little equipment room we call a carrier neutral location. Carriers are the ISPs and the providers, the companies. Neutral means that that's either a facility that's a drop-in like a cell site, or it's a remodeled section in an existing municipal building, much like what was recently built in downtown Durango. And that location allows networks to interconnect. It allows the middle mile providers to connect to the last mile providers. It allows you to get access to the backbone where traffic can go east and west. But that's basically what we're building, are these laterals all around to connect to the backbone. I think there were 9 of them built along Interstate 70 from Fruita to Glenwood Springs. We've got a host of them throughout Region 10's territory. And then we've got the Bayfield lateral that will be provided by the Southern Utes, and the backbone section reaching Ignacio and Pagosa Springs. And then west into Montezuma County, some of the fiber construction that will occur through the grant cycles will bring additional fiber there. And there's a tri-state lateral that goes from the Empire region north of Cortez into Cortez. So, Shaq, advance one. So this is what a carrier neutral location looks like if you were flying over it. We basically have cabinets or racks inside of a small building or a small room. On the left side are the racks for the middle mile equipment. That's the equipment that sends light and data east and west around the backbone. On the right are cabinets or racks that we can lease to internet service providers to allow them to put their last mile, their local equipment, into that room and access homes and businesses. So this truly is a place where the two networks meet. We have redundant air conditioning. We have a generator outside to stabilize power. We had an IP camera so we can see what's going on. If there's a problem, we can improve our processes. And we have badge access to the door so that we know who's coming and going. This equipment room looks and functions much like a small data center with a very light power footprint. So, Jack, next slide. So inside the CNL, Region 10 places some equipment. And that equipment comes down to kind of three categories. The first is the little gray boxes on the upper part. Those are functionally a prism. They allow us to send different colors of light along the fiber and to increase the capacity along the fiber using colors of light rather than many strands of fiber. We only use 2 or 4 strands of fiber, but we send many colors of light. The next device down, the transponders, those are kind of like a flashlight. Those are a really fast flashlight that encodes and decodes data in a fairly sophisticated way, but they're basically like putting the color of the light into the prism. And at the bottom there, kind of the key to this whole network architecture in blue is the router. And a router in each community in this case allows us to make local decisions as to whether or not your traffic is going to head to Salt Lake, head to Denver, Albuquerque, or Dallas. And actually, when that traffic arrives at the CNL, that decision, we basically do a lookup and decide on a destination. The path the data takes is very efficient. So at the end of the day, we're trying to offer services to private industry. We're trying to support the wireline provider, which is your fiber to the home providers. You've got several of them investing in Region 9 right now. The fixed wireless providers can tap into this. And then ultimately, we want to have the mobile wireless providers, your cellular providers, use the network as well. So Shaq, let you advance. So from Region 10, we're out here on the west. The 3 areas that have expressed interest in the network and participating were really the folks in Mesa and Garfield County, the folks out all throughout Region 9 below, and the folks in the San Luis Valley and Walsenburg. That circle could be a little bit bigger actually, but that's what it is. And then there's an existing network between Denver and Garfield County in the northeast called Project Thor that has developed a similar infrastructure in their territory. So, Shaq, good. So how do we develop that optical capacity? This is as close to a science lesson as I provide in this presentation, but we basically take all the colors of light and we bring them into that prism. They're all at different frequencies, so it's like different channels on your radio. And then they go across the same piece of glass, and on the other side, we break them back out. So that's how we can scale the network with light rather than with a lot of strands of fiber. So there's no large cables here. We can often lease fiber on existing networks, and where we have to build new fiber, we actually use a very, very few of the strands in the cable and leave those strands available for other things. Next slide. So routing kind of matters. If you have a problem, if you look at that orange X on the lower left, if there's a cable break, there's an equipment failure, a power outage, you name it, you want to have a second way for your traffic to get from you to where your data, your stuff, is housed. And that once you send that request, that data has to be sent back to you. So you have to have a continuous path all the way back to you. But the ring architecture allows us to do that. There's more than one way to do it, but it does allow us to get to multiple internet drains to get out to those destination locations. Shaq, next slide. Routing matters both on the local level as well as the backbone level. So if you're that CNL in orange there on the upper right, you want to make sure that you have an east and a west route. I think of Pagosa Springs in this example. You know, Pagosa has been cut off numerous times. And every time they're cut off, there's no eastbound route that's active today over Wolf Creek Pass heading towards Walsenburg. We're in the process of trying to lease fiber there and develop access to the fiber there and put the equipment in place. All they have is that westbound route back to Durango. So any impact to that cable, any impact to that equipment, any power outage, you name it, any maintenance that needs to be done on a regular basis, takes out or severely impairs or reduces the performance of that network. And then on the backbone side, these are kind of the areas, once we get the interior fiber built eventually, north, south, east, and west within the state, we would have these kind of like subdivided domains where failures would affect fewer and fewer people over time as we progress. And next slide, check. So at the end of the day, this is kind of what we have line of sight to today. This shows you in green the backbone around the state. It shows the addition of all the CNLs that have been built between Glenwood Springs and Grand Junction and Fruita. It shows not all, but a portion of the Region 10 CNLs. We've got about 14 of them, and this shows about 5 or 6. But we have a regional loop that we're developing in Region 10, where we go from Montrose to Nucla, Norwood, Telluride, and from Telluride to Ridgeway, we're trying to develop fiber in that area so we can create that loop. And we go down to Uray and back up to Montrose. So in that case, if there's a fiber cut along that loop, Norwood, Telluride, everybody would still have access out the second route. And the same thing is under development here in the Southwest. So if you look at the Empire region, that has a route down to Cortez. With some of the grant construction, fiber will come across 160 to Mancos, and Mancos would then have an east and a west path. Cortez would have an east and a west path. You know, if you have that type of redundancy, you naturally double the capacity. And a facility like 2210, a private facility that's a data center, hosting applications and trying to have internet service providers house their equipment there, becomes incredibly more valuable. Comes through Durango, offers the same advantages there, and then goes over to Three Springs where the tribe is located. We have a lateral up to Bayfield. There's a potential to connect Durango to Bayfield with Tri-State, so we could create another loop in that area. And then both the backbone and the access route continue over to Pagosa Springs. And from there, we're working with the folks in the San Luis Valley to come up with a plan to extend the network over to Alamosa and continue with leased fiber out to Walsenburg and back up to Denver. So that just kind of gives you I wouldn't say the final state, but at least what we have line of sight to. And Shaq, I'll let you continue from there.
Thank you. So what have we done so far? Well, we've begun collaborating with the local IT workers from the counties, from the municipalities, to get their input to make sure what's being built out is really what's needed. CNLs have been built in Colbrand, Palisade, Grand Junction, Delta, Montrose, Nucla, Norwood, Telluride, Ridgeway, Uray, the Empire Substation, Cortez, Mancos, Durango, and Bayfield. And the reason Empire and Cortez are ostracized is because those are both private. And so I do want to call that out. Fiber lines are being built. The La Plata and Archuleta County Commissioners will be aware of the project in partnership with La Plata Electric and with the Southern Ute Indian Tribe to build out middle mile across Highway 151. And we are trying to build some of the middle mile through the CPF that we supported getting awards for. This is again, we're trying to support that middle mile, but all of this will provide last mile connections to the homes in all of our counties. So Archuleta County has an award going to Clear Networks to connect 561 homes and to Visionary to connect 1,034 homes. La Plata County, there's awards going to Clear Networks to connect 2,338 homes. The Southern Ute Indian Reservation was able to get an award for Wildcat Canyon to connect 557 homes. And in Montezuma County, Clear Networks got awards to connect 370 homes on Highway 160 and 598 homes on 184 between Mancos and Dolores. We don't have that going quite over to Narragansett yet. We will be pursuing that. The Human Ute Indian Tribe has been awarded $22.7 million to build out their last mile connections, and included in that will be some of the middle mile needed to get on 491 up to Cortez, and potentially provide another south exit for Montezuma and Cortez. And then the Southern Ute Indian Tribe has been awarded $44 million for connecting tribal homes in their reservation and on tribal lands as well. Additionally, there have been IRUs that have been secured along I-70 from the Colorado Department of Transportation and from ZAO, and from Empire Substation to Durango and Cortez. That's currently agreed upon for 6 years, but there's an opportunity to upgrade that for a 10-year. And as you know, we are in negotiations. We have signed an IGA with the Colorado Department of Transportation for an IRU over Wolf Creek Pass. However, no task orders have been executed on that. That may be available as early as August, maybe as late as September or October this year. And so that's what's been done up to this point. What we're pursuing in this round of energy impact assistance funds from DOLA is the equipment that Corey was talking about earlier to light up the middle mile network that we're building. So the CNLs are all going to be connected to Grand Junction and to Durango via 100 GE link that will travel along an access route parafiber. And then up to 10 CNLs can be connected along any span of that using the equipment that we've talked about, the Sienna 5132 system with up to 30 wavelengths for the 10 sites. And each CNL would automatically then, based on the IRUs that have already been secured and the fiber already built, be connected to Grand Junction and have that east-west path to Salt Lake and to Denver respectively. And so what we're going after is first the optical equipment. That's what sends the wavelengths from CNL to CNL up and down the network, and would connect us into the main network. Without that equipment to light that up, there simply would be dark fiber with no traffic occurring on it. And then the second pieces of electronics that we want to get are the routers. Corey talked about this self-healing ring that, if there's a fire in somewhere in the San Juan National Forest that destroys part of that fiber network, the router is what would make the decision to send it the other way through the San Luis Valley and up I-25 to get to Denver rather than up through Grand Junction. So the routing equipment is critical to make sure that when there's a strike, that the redundant nature of the loop kicks in. And that's one of the problems that we see frequently is the ISPs providing the last mile access may have a single route in or out that they're getting their upstream bandwidth from, but they don't have another path out, so they're not automatically rerouted. That is something that we are trying to address with this network. Hopefully your IT directors have shared this with you, but as we break this down, the equipment that goes into the upstream Empire substation, Cortez, Mancos, Durango, Bayfield, Pagosa, and then the programming of those, as well as the routers in the access CNLs, are all broken out as a 50-50 cost share. And we're only asking the local governments to contribute for what would specifically go into their areas. In the upstream services, and the services provided for those. Region 9 is searching for separate funding to cover those, and we have noted those as pending. We have certainly not told the state that any of you have confirmed to pay any of these amounts. So we've talked about what has been done. We've talked about what we're trying to do now. Often I'm asked, how much more are you going to come back and ask for? How long is this going to take? Well, we still need several more IRUs. We need to extend the Empire to Cortez from 6 to 10 years. That would be at a cost of $300,000. We need an IRU until we can build out fiber from Mancos to Hesperus. We would need an IRU from Tri-State to ride on their lines. As I mentioned, we've got to pay for the IRU from Wolf Creek to cross Wolf Creek from Pagosa to South Fork. We also internally to Region 9 need to secure a cohesive strand up 550 from Durango to Silverton, up 145 from Dolores to Rico, on 491 from the intersection of 184 to Dove Creek, and in the San Luis Valley, we need on Highway 160 from South Fork to Walsenburg, and then as Corey alluded to, we're trying to work with New Mexico with the trains to get along I-25 from Walsenburg to Denver. Middle mile fiber builds, we still need to build out Highway 160 from Mancos, at least to the Southern Ute network at Hesperus, assuming that we could get an IRU from Southern Ute once we meet them at Hesperus. We need an IRU we need fiber to be built out from Silverton to Uray over Red Mountain Pass. I know Tri-State is working on that. That's obviously going to be a very costly build to connect the regions there, and that'll be some of those internal loops that we're talking about, not for the main middle mile backbone. We need to build out Highway 184 from Dolores to Narragansett, or the intersection of 491 for those of you that are not local to the Cortez area, and then from Highway 491 from the intersection of 184 south back into Cortez. And once we have those 184 loops connected, that will build an internal loop in Montezuma County connecting Cortez, Dolores, and Mancos. And then we still need additional CNLs. Hopefully we can get one at Three Springs. There will be CNLs needed at Fort Garland, South Fork, Alamosa, Walsenburg, and potentially others. And then we still need to get last mile built to all the residential people that need it. So how long is this going to take, and how much is this going to cost? Well, with DOLA giving out grants at $1 million at a pop, if those are the only grant sources we take, it's going to take a long time. We also pursue other grants. You were all aware of our planning to go after NTIA. If we would have been awarded the $66 million for middle mile infrastructure, it sure would have gone a lot quicker. But we don't know what grants are going to be available when. You all do continue to mark broadband and connectivity as a high priority when my colleague Heather Otter comes along and works with you on your community development action plans. And so we are going to continue to work on that. But the best answer I can give is we will work to continue to be successful little by little. We are going to do it as quickly as possible, depending on the funding available, and we're going to do it as cost effectively as possible, and we're going to do it together. We will keep you and your IT professionals looped in every step of the way, but it's likely as opportunities come along, as long as you have it marked as a high priority to you, that we're going to continue to come back and say, hey, this is what we can do next this year to continue trying to help everybody be successful in getting connected. And we really do want to do it as quickly as possible as the funds come in. And we know that you can't commit future boards. We also are aware of what Denver is trying to do with property taxes, and you don't know whether your revenue source is going up or going down. We just know that top-down planning that hasn't included the local governments and the local IT professionals hasn't worked in the past, and nobody's coming to save us, so we're going to have to figure this out on our own. And so we're going to work the best that we can to do that and to keep you looped in and to work with you and to work with your budgets as much as possible. And I know that's not an exact estimate. I know if we were to ask Commissioner Lindsay, who also sits on the Empire Electric Board, if there was no electricity in Montezuma County, what would it take and how long would it cost to get electricity to every home? And the best he'd be able to do is give us a shot in the dark, and it wouldn't be anything you could use for budgetary figures. So at this point, Corey and I will open it up to questions that any of the members of the commissions may have, and we'll see if we can do our best to answer them.
Shaq, this is Kent.
Shaq, if I may start it off.
Please do.
I want to say thank you, Shaq and Corey from Region 9 and 10, on just addressing this, this concern that we have here. And I also appreciate Montezuma and Archuleta County for being able to attend. This is an important matter, and as well as you all our three counties have noted is that we are behind on trying to find affordable, attainable, high-speed internet to go to our constituents, and for example, on Senate Bill 91. And so I just want to thank Region 9 and 10 for this. Check. There is an ask, and so maybe I'll allow other commissioners to ask questions first. But will you be, you had a slideshow up real quick on, I believe that was the ask. Kind of want to, after some questions, maybe review that.
Yeah, and I am happy to send this entire slide deck out, which I will do to your county administrators. I'll send this out immediately, and I think probably those of you that are participating on the technical subcommittee probably have access to it already. And I'm pretty sure all of your public notices said no decisions are going to be made at any of these today. So we're certainly not asking any of the commissions for a thumbs up or thumbs down today. This is getting you the information, and then you take this back and chew on it.
Perfect. Thank you very much, and appreciate that. And what benefits, and I'll speak for La Plata, what benefits La Plata will benefit the other counties too as well. So I appreciate the collaboration here.
Warren, I think you're next.
Thanks, Shaq, and thanks to Region 9 and 10. I appreciate this effort collectively. This is so much work. Mine is kind of just beating the old drum because I want to see if there's any update. Have we made any kind of progress with CDOT? Because as much as we want to do all of these things and we need to do these things, if we can't work with CDOT and get access to these right-of-ways, it kind of kills us. And if we do not have any update, what is our plan moving forward? Thank you.
So probably some more people are going to need to chime into this answer with me. But from their starting point of what they were going to charge for annual recurring fees, we have talked them down to, from what they originally started, we've talked them down by 90%. That being said, Commissioner Salka and CCI have introduced legislation that is still being stalled and has been modified many times, asking them to get rid of the annual recurring fee. I know it hasn't made it out of committee yet, but first I will let Commissioner Salka answer that, and then I'll give a potential long-term outcome for Wolf Creek that we don't actually know what's going to happen yet, but I'll give you the best update I can.
Thank you.
Yes, Commissioner Brown, thank you very much. Great question. What is yes, we need to have Senate Bill 91 to be approved and move forward in order to be able to do these type of projects. But with that being said, there still has, as we get our CCI updates, there has been some pushback at the state level. But there is a new amendment moving forward. I have not received any new news yet, other than we're looking at, instead of just a Senate Bill 91, just addressing the removal of ADs. What we're going to be doing is there is a CDOT utility accommodation policy. We're going to ask for changes in that policy, which would bring broadband in as a utility. It's not deemed as a utility, but it's going to put broadband in that policy, which would then force, in a way, it would force to not have that annual component.
Great, thank you for that. Appreciate the information.
Warren, it's Corey here. If you can think back to that map where I showed the blue backbone.
Yeah.
I would say about a third of the communities of the western slope are within proximity of that backbone. So you have to do quite a bit of fiber build to get out to the outlying communities. And if you can't do that along a highway rights of way, it really reduces the reach of the network. So that's why Matt and CCI and the communities have been working so hard to not have to pay a recurring fee, effectively a tax, on a public asset. So
right.
Hopefully they're successful. We've been supporting them as best we can, but we do have quite a bit of construction that comes ahead, and paying a recurring annual fee that we can't figure out what the benefits are from that is not something that's helpful.
Thanks, Corey.
And I did want to let you know, Commissioner Brown, that we have been told by our local CDOT representative, certainly not by anybody up the chain at Herman or Bob's level, but by our local representatives, that there is a strong likelihood that Arcadian Infracom, who has the conduit across the west side of Wolf Creek, may be pulling out, and that conduit may be available. Now, we don't know when that's going to happen, and we also don't know whether that would be subject to CDOT's fees, but it is a potential that if that conduit were full of fiber, it would give the potential to lease that fiber back out to other people who need to get across the pass and make some of that money needed to pay that. Commissioner Porter Norton, I believe your hand was up next.
Yeah, hi everybody, great to see you, and I appreciate this presentation. It was, in some cases, a refresher, but a lot of new stuff too, and a lot of progress. I agree with what Commissioner Brown said. There's just a lot of work here. Couple questions. One is, do we expect state funding? You said DOLA's doing grants $1 million at a time. Do we expect their funding to be sort of stable for helping communities or to go down?
So, unfortunately, this is the last year that DOLA is, well, actually last year was the last year that they will have a broadband set aside out of the Energy Impact Assistance Fund. So what we're requesting now is going to be competing with every water and road and every other project that is in sight. The Colorado Broadband Office has been working on legislation to extend the, I want to call it the high cost mechanism that broadband providers have been paying into, and to use that to in some ways reproduce the work that DOLA's been doing. So I think what we're going to see is a shift from DOLA providing so much of this funding to the CBO providing it. We have written letters to DOLA asking them to continue funding it until the CBO has their plan ready. And we have also written letters to the CBO asking them to emulate the successes that DOLA's had as much as possible. Whether those will be heard or not remains to be seen. But we're hopeful that DOLA will continue to do the work until CBO is ready to take it over, and that the CBO will continue to do things as well as DOLA has in the past. So I'm sorry that's not a great answer. In fact, it's more of a remains to be seen, but it's the best answer I can give at this time, Commissioner.
Thank you. My only other question at this time is, looking for the ask and that slide, I didn't have enough time to really study it and say, what's the total and what would we be asked? And we can chew on that when we get it. You mentioned Bayfield to Durango would be done by Tri-State. Do you know the timing on that with LPEA making a decision to leave Tri-State? And have we thought about what that would mean for this build out by Tri-State?
So, Commissioner, this is Corey here. Hi. The primary fiber from Bayfield to Durango would actually go through the Southern Ute network and come back on the new construction that they've done. We wouldn't be relying on Tri-State initially, but in our discussions with the fiber team within Tri-State, they have signaled that they would be willing to work with us to perfect the rights on the existing fiber they have for their electrical system that goes between Bayfield and Durango. So that's a future opportunity. How the change with LPEA works into that, I don't know, but we've worked with Tri-State very successfully in a number of locations where those same issues with the local regional electrical companies have come up. So the fiber team has been very helpful to the rural regions.
Thank you.
I've got my electronic hand up.
Please just wait, you should have one more, give you next.
I think Montezuma County has their hand up next.
I don't. Go ahead, Travis.
Yeah, it's Kent, Lindsay. Marcia, I don't think that Tri-State would have any problems on those lines because everybody down here in this corner of the world relies on them for transmission. Those lines will still be intact. Nobody's leaving the transmission line, just the cooperative side. And I'm pretty sure, I can't speak for them because I don't sit on that board, but they've been really cooperative with us, with everything. And to go back to Shaq's point, if he were to ask, how much, I guess the short answer would be a lot. But we're plowing in 26 miles trying to get a grant to plow in 26 miles up the Dolores River, and we're talking about putting some conduit in there, just some open conduit to provide that area with fiber if it ever comes a need. But that project is somewhere in the neighborhood of $6 million.
Thank you. Any other questions from the board at Montezuma?
I have none at this time, Shaq.
All right. Eric, I think your hand is up next. Thank you.
Yeah, I was just going to answer a little more in detail the question that Warren had, Commissioner Brown, with regards to CDOT. And if, in addition to what the answers that are already provided, which were definitely accurate, as far as leasing across Wolf Creek, the MSA being signed, we feel pretty confident that, they have a well-established leasing rate that we will be able to proceed with the 43 miles with 4 strands, probably through Region 9, rather than directly through Archuleta County, just because it does have a multi-county and even regional impact as far as the lease of that length from South Fork to Pagosa. The only thing we have to wait on is, as was mentioned, they aren't going to let us lease it until the Paonia project is complete, which is right now looking at like August to September, even though the fiber's in the ground and it's all there. So unfortunately, we won't, as Pagosa, we won't be able to take advantage of it this summer, but I guess in the long scheme of things, we will, as long as we don't have any of those major CenturyLink cuts in this summer, then we may be able to take advantage of it in some way before the next one of those happens. And then it'll become part of ideally what we're talking about here of an overall loop that serves not only Pagosa, but the entirety of the Alpine Loop.
Thanks, Eric.
La Plata County.
Yeah, thank you. Good presentation. Really enjoyed it. Question I have is SB 91 is in committee, as I understand right now, waiting for stakeholder feedback. Do we have a clear set of questions from the committee on what questions they want answered?
Yes. So
Okay.
that's, yeah, we're in process right now. Eric Bergman's working up there in Denver. And yeah, right now we're on the amendment side of it to try to trim the bill. And that's why we're looking at the CDOT utility policy and changing it from just the straight language of removing the annual fees, but then to just update and change their policy itself.
Good, good.
So the potential could be the bill doesn't pass, but policy changes that does the
This
same
bill would
thing.
be, this
The
would
bill
be the
would-
amendment to the bill
Oh.
to address the policy.
Thank you.
And I just wanted to say, while it's on my mind, while we're talking about, if another CenturyLink cut or whatever, sometimes I'm asked, well, if there's all the CenturyLink line through here, why isn't that being used to simply provide internet to the home for everybody? And there's two reasons, but the first being the more physics-related reason is that when CenturyLink put these cables in back in the 80s and 90s, they just were dropping a cable from one area to the next, and at the time they couldn't envision homeowners wanting 10 gig symmetrical services, and so there certainly are not slack loops and excess ways to tie into the fiber that's existing to provide that. And then the second reason is that CenturyLink, as some of you may or may not be aware of, has not been fond of working with anybody. And so one of the ideas of developing these carrier neutral locations is so that the local internet service providers, if it's truly neutral, they'll be able to connect to each other and to whomever they want without ridiculous upstream bandwidth fees. And so that's another goal that we're trying to provide.
Yeah, I would add to that when that MNT network built some of the fiber to the county seats, that fiber is in the hands of a private company. It's not a high strand count cable. It's usually 12 or 24 strands at most. And in some limited occasions, it would be useful to get access to some of that fiber, but it's really not sufficient, like Shaq was saying, to get out to homes and businesses. It would be the places where we found it useful, where we would like to have access to it. The company is unwilling to do that. And it's just not really been a way to solve the problem, unfortunately. In some places, we lease services from CenturyLink, and that's been quite helpful. But in those cases, the capacity is very low, the cost is very high, and as I think Archuleta County has experienced, the reliability is somewhat concerning. So anyways, that fiber is helpful on a limited basis, but we really can't force the hand of a private company to turn over those critical assets. It just hasn't happened.
That answers part of my question there. So the CenturyLink fiber may not be as fast, but it also doesn't have as many strands. Is it polychromatic modulation capable?
Most of the newer fiber is. Some of the electronics capabilities have just improved over the years. We do some things differently today than we did when those cables were put in. And it will work pretty well on that fiber if we were able to get a strand. So I'm proposing a swap with Lumen, which is the current version of that company, a swap into a community right now. We would give them a pair on a route that they need, and they would give us a pair on a route that we need. Our equipment will work perfectly fine on that older fiber. The challenge is that they're unwilling to enter into a swap agreement. They've withdrawn from that proposal to it's an E911 group, actually, that kind of got this going. So it's just a company culture and a directive from either their board or their management that they do hold those assets pretty tight. Occasionally, you can get something to work. There is some places where on the Front Range, they've helped out colleges, things that are not profit-based organizations, but it's even in that realm, it's very limited. So where we can, we try to get access to existing fiber cables. It's usually electrical companies or regional electrical companies, or even private partners. And, in the places where we can't get any of that, we go out and construct, just like Highway 151.
Commissioner Salka, your hand is up.
Yes, thank you. So I sit on the Southwest Broadband group that we have, which is Montezuma and Archuleta County and Region 9 and Region 10 as a whole. But, I am aware of some of, what this could potentially cost. And honestly, I feel that now that we have the moment of 3 counties sitting together right now, I feel that it would be beneficial to know what we're looking at here. I appreciate the education and allowing all the 3 counties and the 3 county commissioners of each county to know where we're at and kind of get us apprised and on the same page here. But for me, I feel it's very important that what is that ask? We're not making a decision today, but I believe that this is something that we need to sit on at least to kind of chew on this a little bit. I'm aware of, the potential ask of LaPlatte County, but I'm unsure of Archuleta and Montezuma if they have an idea of what's going on. And I know it can be pretty pricey, and I will have to say that I'm for this. It's just I feel like, we have this message of it's going to help all of us. We all need to know what that ask is going to be.
So,
Well,
let me find the page with the ask again. And this is very small, and I'm going to be sending it out to your county administrators. But feel free to, I'm sorry I didn't provide a slide that gave a per county match, but feel free to look it over. And again, I'll be sending this out. And like I mentioned earlier, Commissioner Salka, this isn't going to be the last time that we're back asking for funding. I'd like to tell you that this is going to be the last ask, and then all of this is going to be done. But unfortunately, as I went through some detail in, this is going to continue to ask money for some time to come. And I can tell you that Region 9 is looking for a significant amount of the match to do for anything that's not directly tied into your local governments. And the overall ask is going to be $1 million from the state of Colorado, and for $1 million to be split among the 3 counties, and the town of Mancos is also participating, and Region 9. So it's not going to be an equal split. It'll be a split based on the programming and the equipment per location. But we're asking for $1 million from the state. We need to come up with $1 million in match. And I would like to say that Corey has already, in negotiations with Sienna, negotiated a 25% discount off of the list cost. So with the state hopefully paying 50%, and with a 25% discount off the list price already, we're looking at being able to purchase the equipment to route and light up the equipment for 25 cents on the dollar.
Yeah, as far as the scope of what's included here, it's the optical and routing equipment to go in the CNLs, and it's the items required to terminate those circuits in the Durango and Cortez locations. And then in order to transport those signals up to Grand Junction, we had to add some line cards, some items in the existing equipment to support that. So it's kind of a mix of a few things.
I think Montezuma County is next with their hand up.
yeah, Shaq, the only thing that I have, and you'll send this over so that we can actually sit down and review this for what the ask is. But basically, you said $1 million, and that's going to be collectively between all of the partnerships involved here between the 5 counties, basically. And is that correct? The $1 million?
That's correct. $1 million between all of the partners.
And then we can obviously see the breakdown whenever you send this over. So, yeah, that's all I had. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Mays.
Yeah, with these projections, these numbers here, okay, once it gets, and if it does get implemented, and I mean if, because I know there's been a lot of work and a lot of things going on, and whether or not the state kicks in their end of it. But the thing is there an annual projected cost increase to these numbers? I won't be here next year, but I know my other fellow commissioners will be, as long as, and the same with the plot, and maybe with the exception of Clyde, maybe, I'm not sure if he's term limited or not. But what we gotta plan ahead is actually, if Archuleta County is gonna be on a hook for a third of the cost of these, then they need to have some actual kind of solid numbers as to what they can budget for too.
So I can say that the equipment is a one-time purchase, but I will defer to Corey to talk about any support and ongoing maintenance.
Sure. So Commissioner Mays, thanks for the question. This is basically the acquisition and installation of the equipment. There are some line items that we've included that are the technical support for equipment failures, software upgrades, kind of the ongoing support contracts, and those are on a 3-year basis. But the actual operations of the network is an open discussion right now. We're, in Region 10, we're operating our network within our 6 counties, and we've taken on some additional responsibilities to the north. The 3 regions, Region 9, Region 10, and the Northwest COG have a discussion as to how, and some other partners as well, as to how the regions can work together to create an operating entity to do this in a more holistic fashion, so that we're not, recreating the wheel region by region. So I think there's some discussion there. But as far as the operations going forward, that's an active discussion. This is basically to acquire the equipment and get it installed and have the minimum support contracts to get started with.
Okay, thank you. One other thing that just kind of came to my mind just when you mentioned that last part. Now, this equipment, we purchase it now and then install it later, or do we, I know there's always a cost increase on everything that's gone up with inflation right now. So even if we purchase this equipment now, it still could be outdated later when we implement it. Is that a possibility?
Well, we want to keep that window as narrow as possible between acquisition and deployment. We don't want it to sit on a shelf for any length of time, and we don't want to delay the purchase, because every year we're seeing about an 8% increase in the equipment cost. It's a careful dance. The other 2 pieces that we need to account for going forward is replacement cost after 5 or 7 years. Once the technology has kind of outpaced what we're buying today, that happens on a regular window. So anyways, that's kind of, and then the refresh of the support services. So we're buying a 3-year contract to begin with on the support services. When we get within 6 months of that 3-year support contract coming up, then we'd want to be able to afford that. But that's all contained within the larger discussion of how the several regions might work together.
Okay, well, at least we got an 8% idea to kind of assess into it.
That's what we're seeing. That can change if supply chain slows down, if supply chain speeds up, it puts pressure on the vendors either direction. It's not a 20-40% swing. It's incremental.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Commissioner Porter Norton.
Yeah, lots of questions that I can follow up on after I studied this, but, and if I missed this, I apologize. What was the methodology for assigning, I'm looking at the row, the second from the right. So it's Region 9, it goes through all the counties. Right. That's okay. Thought I was seeing things for a second, Shaq. So what was the methodology for assigning the cost by county? And then I only see one town as a payor. Are the other municipalities, could they be considered payors?
Mancos, there's potential, depending on funding. You see the town of Bayfield in there, they have a new board. The majority of the board is new, so this would all be new information to them, but there's certainly room for that. The town of Mancos had volunteered to be a part of this because they want to own and have control of the parts that are in their CNL.
So you do see a potential of asking the municipalities, and then my other question is just how did these get assigned? I mean, I see that for the Durango one at the top, and then it says deployment Durango, that those are assigned to La Plata County. But so that's how the costs got allocated, depending on where the infrastructure was, what county it's in.
Correct.
There's
Not like population or anything like that.
No, it is not by population. It is the location of the carrier neutral locations.
Thank you.
So Commissioner, Corey, again, there's kind of a symbiotic relationship between the different communities. Some are outlying and some are more municipal or metro, like Durango and Cortez. So the larger communities of Durango and Cortez, as an example, benefit from the fiber and access to the outside where the equipment goes into the remote CNLs. And the remote CNLs have to have someplace for the equipment to terminate, which is in Durango, Cortez primarily. So this was based on location. As I understand, at least as we had it estimated, maybe Shaq, you've massaged that further, but it was intended to be kind of a location-based estimate.
And if I could just mention one thing, this project is to get equipment into the CNLs to connect into the statewide network. So this is not the equipment that's already in the CNLs that are going to serve last mile or the ISPs are going to use. This is something that we want to match the equipment Region 10 is doing and the equipment that's going to connect the loop. So that's, the big reason we want to all match and make sure it all works well together. Our intent is also to continue to look for funds. We're going to apply for BEAD, which is last mile, but there is a possibility, very small possibility. Do you guys remember the RDOF auctions that were done by the FCC several years ago? It was Connexon, I believe, Montezuma County probably remembers this, where they basically bid to cover, to build service throughout these different underserved regions, and they actually returned the money. Part of it was due to the tribes, them not communicating with them and bidding on covering their land. And so that returned money is sitting with the FCC, and we've been working with our senators about could they give that money back to the state that lost it and put it out for additional middle mile funding. And that's something that's in process as well, but the state has to request that money and then they decide how it gets distributed, and they may do a whole nother grant process, But that's something we're looking at because there is no middle mile funding, and that's really what we need, not last mile with a tiny bit of middle mile. But we want to do grants because we know we don't want the counties to be fronting the whole load or not doing anything because they can't pay for it.
And I will say that possibility of getting those RDOF funds for middle mile is definitely moving at the speed of both state and federal government.
So, not at all.
Well, that kind of points back to the beginning of the slide, the entire conversation here, where the local and regional planning is what really brings results. We may need funding from the outside, but it's what you do locally and regionally that seems to develop the infrastructure to fill these gaps. The private industry has done a phenomenal job where they can, where the revenue model supports it, but it's really left this middle mile piece, which is, difficult to address. And then our goals are simple. They're the redundancy, capacity, and cost reduction over time. So it just puts it kind of back in our lap to at least make the moves that we can and then leverage the funding that we have access to. And DOLA has been a phenomenal partner, and we're really looking forward to seeing what CBO offers.
And I would also say, to echo what Corey's saying about some of these top-down efforts from before EagleNet and some of the other things that we've seen, including RDOF, the federal government chose private industry to give billions of dollars to, who then took that public money and built the infrastructure for pennies on the dollar, and then expected the ISPs and the public to pay top dollar for access to that equipment, even though they had got it at a completely subsidized price. I think the term is crony capitalism. Montezuma County, you've got your hand up.
Now, I'll lower it now, Shaq, after that statement. I'll leave it all alone.
All right. Are there any further questions or comments, or shall we spend the next 10 minutes looking at slides of each other?
You guys can look
I
at
have
each
a
other,
question.
but we have someplace else to go.
I guess my question is when we talk about buying equipment, what is that timeline that we're looking at for buying this equipment?
So the first thing is to develop the matching funds, which is the conversation here. And the application to DOLA has been placed by Region 9. That will go through the review process with DOLA. And should that award be made to Region 9, then Region 9 would begin the procurement process. And once we place a purchase order with the vendors, you're looking anywhere from 90 to 120 days to actually get the equipment in hand. We've got quite a bit of work to do on the ground in the meantime, developing the fiber, getting access to it, splicing, testing, all that. So it kind of works out. But you'd love to put an order in and get it next week, but there is a little bit of a lead time on the equipment. It's not as bad as it was during the pandemic, where we were looking upwards of a year lead time, 52 weeks on some components, but we're in the 3 to 5 month range right now.
And DOLA funding is 2 years. So if we get it, we have a 2-year window for this project.
Eric?
Yes, for the benefit at least of the Arcelor County Commissioners contingent, the funds that you saw on that particular grant application, at this point, I've got an earmark for most of those coming from the funds that we basically you've already allocated to the broadband office to spend. This one came a little bit higher than I had earmarked, but I might be able to go to the PCOSA as for the other conversation of municipalities, go to PCOSA's town council and see if they can make up the difference in that, since they're a direct beneficiary of this as well. And at one point, if we were going to do this kind of, this is kind of just more of a general point, we're going to do this kind of a build of a loop. I think these guys have made a pretty good descriptive point of how this is the way to make that loop actually function, is to purchase this equipment. It's not the last part, it's not the last piece, but we're well underway with filling in a lot of these gaps in that loop, including some pretty major efforts on that 151 project, which was amazing that we were able to get that done, and that's underway. And the fact that CDOT is building over Wolf Creek, which is about a $30 million build. Nobody else, no commercial entity would have ever built over that pass for that amount, and it's via public funds. So we should be able to, as the public that it goes through, get access to it. So I'm confident that we will be able to. So those are two big components. At one point, Corey showed that ring, and really on either side of Pagosa was it's a space where there was a big gap, and we're filling both of those in for the most part, the big sections. But the next one after that, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Corey, it's not like these are the last steps, but the last steps to really kind of make the interconnect happen is there's still going to be a couple gaps, maybe as few as a few blocks over from Three Springs to the existing fiber that was built in 2012 in Durango or La Plata County. Perhaps some easement perfections that we also have to do in La Plata County, and some interconnects, potentially even South Fork, just to get connected to some of those other existing fiber assets. And I'm sure there's a few leases that not only our region, but Corey and Region 10 are also looking at as far as other ways to pay for the other remaining RUs on the existing assets. So there's a few things, I think this fall, we may even go to another, if there's another dole around, to kind of ask for the filling in of those little sections that will get our immediate needs addressed. And maybe we can start to make some of this loop at least work even before the entirety of it does, and then maybe Corey can address that. So there may be stages to how it functions, and with particular to Archuleta County, as isolated as we are, we'll take advantage of whatever we can, is kind of my standpoint.
Yeah, so to the east of you, SCED, the Southern Colorado Economic Development District, San Luis Valley and the communities east, they have hired a consultant to put together a budget and a plan and submit that to DOLA similarly. We've provided support to them, just like we've provided support to you. And the hope is that if that is awarded, that would begin to help that region acquire the fiber to get across to Walsenburg. And then we're talking to the state of New Mexico about how to get from Walsenburg up to Denver with some assets that neighboring state has. Still need to find money for equipment up by 25, but if we could get access to that fiber, that would be ideal. And there are a couple small areas. You know, Highway 151, that build is a significant move forward. I can't overstate that enough. That was left from EagleNet. They didn't pursue it. MNT didn't even attempt it. I mean, that build out to Pagosa through Ignacio and in partnership with the tribe and La Plata Electric, that gets us an open section of this ring that we would have been waiting till the sun went down for the transportation department to build that. They don't have the funding either. So that's a big piece. And then that section from Three Springs into downtown Durango, there's some city fiber that can be used. And then we've got to connect that into the CNL that Shaq just completed recently in downtown Durango. So a number of these pieces are moving, but you've got a pretty sizable team in Region 9 working on each of these items, and they're making progress.
All right. Any further questions or comments?
No.
Well, then I'm happy to give you 2.5 minutes back in your agenda.
Thanks.
We like it. We're not gonna close it.
All right. Well, this meeting has come to an adjournment. It's 4:00 and we are done for the day, gentlemen. Thank you.